Jake Morrison wiped the sweat from his forehead and looked at the rock samples spread across his work table. The morning sun on Kepler 442b was already getting hot, and he still had 3 more sites to check before lunch. He picked up his hammer and chisel, stuffing them into his backpack, along with sample bags and his water bottle. The research station where Jake worked was small and simple. Just a few metal buildings connected by covered walkways, sitting in a clearing surrounded by thick forest. Most days, he was the only person there. The main colony was 50 miles away, and they only sent supply ships once a month. The quiet gave him time to focus on his work without distractions. He had been on this planet for 8 months now, studying the rocks and soil to help the colony find better places to mine. The work was important, but it could be lonely. Sometimes he talked to himself just to hear a human voice. His only real companions were the small animals that lived in the forest, creatures that looked like a mix between squirrels and birds. Would watch him work from the trees. Chattering at each other in their strange language, Jake walked into the forest. Following a path he had made over the past few weeks, the trees were tall and thick, with leaves that were more blue than green. Strange flowers grew everywhere, filling the air with sweet smells. It was beautiful, but Jake had learned to be careful. Some of the plants were poisonous, and there were predators in the deep woods. 3 miles from his station, Jake found the rock formation he wanted to study. It was a wall of stone that rose up from the forest floor like a frozen wave. The minerals in it caught the sunlight and sparkled, like jewels. He set down his pack and got to work, carefully chipping away small pieces to take back to his lab. While he worked, Jake felt like someone was watching him. He stopped and looked around, but saw nothing except trees and bushes. The feeling wouldn't go away, though. It was the same feeling he used to get in the army when enemy snipers were nearby. His hands moved a little faster as he collected his samples. Far above in the trees, something moved. Jake caught a glimpse of silver, but when he looked up there, was nothing there. The forest animals had gone quiet. Even the wind seemed to have stopped. Jake packed his tools quickly and started walking back to the station. He tried to tell himself he was being silly, but his military training had taught him to trust his instincts. Something was wrong. That night, Jake couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about the silver flash he had seen in the trees. No animal on this planet was that color. He got up and checked the security cameras around his station. Everything looked normal, but the feeling of being watched was stronger than ever. He made coffee and sat at his computer, reviewing the day's work. The rock samples were interesting. They contained metals that could be very valuable to the colony. But Jake found it hard to concentrate. Every few minutes, he would look out the window, expecting to see something staring back at him. Around midnight, Jake heard a sound outside. It was soft, like someone walking very carefully. He turned off his lights and grabbed the rifle he kept for protection against wild animals. Moving quietly to the window, he looked out into the darkness. At first, he saw nothing. Then something moved near the edge of the forest. It was tall, much taller than a human, and it seemed to shimmer in the moonlight. Jake held his breath and watched. The figure stood completely still for several minutes, then melted back into the shadows like smoke. Jake stayed awake the rest of the night, sitting by the window, with his rifle across his knees. When the sun came up, he went outside to look for tracks. In the soft dirt near the tree line, he found footprints unlike anything he had ever seen. They were roughly human-shaped, but much larger, with what looked like claw marks at the tips of the toes. Over the next few days, Jake noticed more signs that something was stalking him. Plants were broken in ways that suggested a large creature had passed through. Scratches appeared on trees, too high up for any known animal to make. His motion sensors kept going off, but when he checked the cameras, nothing was there. Jake knew he should call for help, but what would he say? That he thought something was watching him. The colony was already short on people and supplies. They wouldn't send a rescue team just because he was feeling paranoid. Instead, Jake began to prepare. He had been a soldier before becoming a scientist, and old habits came back quickly. He moved his most important equipment into the strongest building. He set up extra lights around the station and checked his weapons. If something was hunting him, he would be ready. On the fifth night, it attacked. Jake was working late in his lab when all the lights went out. Emergency power kicked. In a few seconds later, but in that brief moment of darkness, something had moved. Jake grabbed his rifle and pressed his back against the wall. Glass shattered in the next room. Jake heard footsteps, slow and careful. Whatever was in his station was big and trying to move quietly. Could hear it breathing, a sound like wind. Through leaves, Jake crept toward the door, rifle ready. In the dim emergency lighting, he could see a shadow moving in the hallway. It was impossibly tall and seemed to flow rather than walk. Silver skin caught the light like liquid metal. The creature turned toward him, and Jake saw golden eyes that glowed in the darkness. They were beautiful and terrible at the same time, like the eyes of a big cat, but filled with intelligence. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then the creature leaped toward him with inhuman speed. Jake threw himself sideways and fired his rifle. The bullet struck the wall where the creature had been a split second before, was already gone, moving. Faster than anything that size should be able to move. Jake ran for the exit. Knowing he couldn't fight this thing in the closed space of his station, he burst through the door and sprinted toward the forest, hoping the trees would give him cover. Behind him, he heard a sound like angry wind chimes. The creature was following. Jake had explored these woods for months, knew every path and hiding spot. Using this knowledge, he led his pursuer through the thickest parts of the forest, where the branches would slow down something as large as his attacker. Several times he heard crashes behind him as the creature forced its way through obstacles. After running for an hour, Jake finally stopped. He was deep in the woods, hidden in a cave he had discovered weeks ago. His heart was pounding, and his hands were shaking from fear and adrenaline. But he was alive. Jake sat in the darkness and tried to understand what had just happened. The creature that attacked him was clearly intelligent. It had waited for the right moment and moved with purpose. This wasn't some wild animal acting on instinct. This was a hunter, and Jake was its prey. He thought about the golden eyes and the way the creature had moved. It was alien, unlike anything in the colony's databases. Where had it come from? Why was it hunting him? And most importantly, how was he going to survive? Jake checked his supplies. He had his rifle and about 30 rounds of ammunition. Backpack contained some food, water, and basic survival gear. It wasn't much, but it would have to do. As dawn broke over the forest, Jake realized his life had just changed completely. He was no longer a scientist studying rocks on a peaceful planet. He was prey in a deadly game he didn't understand. He had survived the first attack, and that meant he had a chance. Jake Morrison had been a soldier once. Now it was time to remember how to fight. Jake spent 3 days in the cave before he dared to move. He rationed his food and water carefully, knowing he might need to survive for a long time. During the quiet hours, he planned his next moves. The creature had found him once. It would find him again if he stayed in one place too long. On the 4th morning, Jake left the cave before sunrise. He moved carefully through the forest, avoiding the paths he usually took. Every few hundred yards, he stopped to listen and look around. The woods seemed normal, but Jake had learned not to trust appearances. He made his way to a supply cache he had hidden months ago. It was a metal box buried under a fallen log containing emergency food, water purification tablets, and extra ammunition for his rifle. Jake had made several of these caches around the forest as part of his safety preparations. Now, they might save his life. While digging up the cache, Jake heard a sound that made his blood freeze. It was the same wind chime noise the creature had made during the attack, but this time it sounded different. Almost like laughter. Jake grabbed the supplies and ran. Behind him, trees crashed as something large pushed through the forest. Creature was following his trail, and it was getting closer. For the next 2 weeks, Jake lived like a hunted animal. He never stayed in the same place for more than one night. He learned to move without leaving tracks, to find water without using the obvious streams, and to sleep with one eye open. The creature was always somewhere nearby, watching and waiting. Jake began to understand his enemy better. The creature, was incredibly strong and fast, but it wasn't perfect. It made mistakes. Sometimes it lost his trail when he crossed rocky ground or waded through streams. Sometimes it seemed to get confused by the false trails he left behind. The first time Jake managed to trick his pursuer, he felt a moment of hope. He had spent hours setting up a fake campsite with his spare clothes arranged to look like a sleeping person. Then he hid in the trees and waited. When the creature attacked the empty camp, Jake got his first good look at it. She was clearly female. Though unlike any female Jake had ever seen, 7 feet tall with silver skin that seemed to shift and flow in the moonlight. Her body was built like a dancer's, all lean muscle and graceful lines. But her hands ended in claws, and her golden eyes held the cold intelligence of a predator. Jake watched as she realized she had been tricked. The sound she made was definitely laughter, but there was no humor in it. She was enjoying the hunt. This was a game to her, and Jake was just another piece on the board. After that night, the chase became more intense. The creature seemed to respect Jake's cunning, but it also made her more determined. She began using new tactics, trying to drive him toward dead ends or dangerous parts of the forest. Jake responded by becoming more creative with his survival strategies. He learned to use the planet's geology to his advantage. He knew where the unstable cliffs were, where the ground was soft enough to create pitfalls, and where the strange plants grew that could hide his scent. 1 month into the chase, Jake almost died. He had been running for 3 days straight, barely stopping to rest. Exhaustion made him careless, and he walked into an obvious trap. The creature had been waiting in the trees above a narrow canyon. She dropped down behind him, cutting off his escape route. Jake spun around and fired his rifle. The bullet grazed her shoulder, drawing a line of dark blood across her silver skin. But instead of retreating, she smiled. The wound didn't seem to slow her down at all. She rushed toward him with claws extended. Jake threw himself backward, falling off a small cliff into the canyon below. He hit the rocky bottom hard and felt something crack in his ribs. Pain shot through his chest with every breath. The creature appeared at the edge of the cliff above him. She could have jumped down and finished him easily. Instead, she looked at him for a long moment, then disappeared back into the forest. Jake didn't understand why she had let him live. Maybe she wanted the hunt to continue. Maybe killing a helpless enemy wasn't satisfying enough for her. Whatever the reason, Jake was grateful for the chance to escape. He dragged himself to another of his supply caches and spent a week healing his ribs. During that time, he thought about what he had learned. The creature was playing with him, but she was also testing him. Each encounter taught her something new about human capabilities. Jake realized he needed to change his strategy. Running and hiding wasn't enough. He needed to become the hunter instead of just the prey. He began setting traps. Simple ones at first, made from rocks and branches. The creature avoided them easily, but Jake wasn't trying to catch her. He was trying to slow her down and make her think differently about the chase. As the weeks passed, Jake's traps became more sophisticated. He used his knowledge of chemistry to create small explosive devices from mining supplies he found in old survey sites. He rigged deadfalls that could crush a tree trunk. He even managed to electrify a water crossing using salvaged equipment from his research station. The creature adapted to each new challenge. She became more careful, testing every step before committing to it. But Jake could see that his tactics were having an effect. She was no longer just hunting him. She was studying him. 3 months into the chase, Jake finally managed to wound her seriously. He had spent days preparing an ambush at a natural bottleneck between 2 cliffs. When she tried to follow his trail through the narrow passage, Jake triggered an explosion that brought down half the cliff face. Rocks the size of cars crashed down around the creature. Most of them missed, but one caught her in the leg as she tried to leap to safety. Jake heard her cry out in pain for the first time. It wasn't the wind chime sound she usually made. It was something more basic and real. Jake watched from his hiding place as she examined her injured leg. The wound was deep, and dark blood stained the rocks around her. For a moment, she looked vulnerable, almost human. Then she looked directly at Jake's hiding spot and made that laughing sound again. Even wounded, she had known exactly where he was. She limped away into the forest, but Jake could hear respect in her laughter now. That night, Jake allowed himself to feel proud. He had survived 3 months against an enemy that should have killed him in the first few minutes. He had learned to match her cunning with his own. More importantly, he had earned her respect. But Jake also knew the game was far from over. The creature was healing, adapting, learning from every encounter. She would be back, and she would be even more dangerous than before. As Jake settled down to sleep in another hidden cave, he wondered about his pursuer. What kind of species produced hunters like her? Where did she come from? And why did she seem to enjoy the challenge so much? He was beginning to realize that this wasn't just about survival anymore. Somewhere during the long chase, the relationship between them had changed. They were no longer just predator and prey. They were opponents in a deadly dance that neither of them wanted to end. Jake closed his eyes and tried to rest. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new dangers, and new opportunities to prove that humans were not the weak creatures his enemy believed them to be. In the distance, he could hear the wind chime sound echoing through the forest. She was out there, watching and waiting. But for the first time since the chase began, Jake wasn't afraid. He was ready for whatever came next. The storm came without warning. Jake was tracking through a rocky valley when the sky suddenly turned black. Wind howled between the stone walls, and rain began falling in sheets so thick he could barely see 10 feet ahead. Lightning cracked overhead, turning the world white for split seconds before plunging it back into darkness. Jake knew he had to find shelter fast. Flash floods were common in these valleys during storms, and the water could rise 20 feet in minutes. He climbed up the valley wall, searching for a cave or overhang that could protect him from the wind and rain. Through the storm, Jake heard a sound that made him freeze. It was the wind chime noise his pursuer made, but it sounded different, pained, desperate. She was somewhere nearby, and she was in trouble. Jake's first instinct was to run. This could be a trap. But as another flash of lightning lit up the valley, he saw something that changed his mind. A massive boulder had broken loose from the cliff face and was sliding down toward the valley floor. If the creature was caught in its path, even her strength wouldn't save her. Against every survival instinct he had, Jake ran toward the sound instead of away from it. He found her trapped under a pile of smaller rocks that had fallen during the landslide. Her left leg was pinned, and dark blood pooled around her. The big boulder was still sliding down the cliff, picking up speed as it fell. Jake didn't think. He just acted. Grabbing a sturdy branch from the ground, he used it as a lever to move the rocks off her leg. The creature looked at him with golden eyes full of surprise and pain. She tried to stand but collapsed as her injured leg gave out. The boulder was almost on top of them. Jake grabbed the creature around the waist and half-carried, half-dragged her toward a narrow crack in the canyon wall. They squeezed through just as the boulder crashed past, shaking the ground like an earthquake. They were in a small cave, barely, big enough for both of them. Jake let go of the creature and backed away, suddenly realizing what he had done. He had just saved the life of something that had been trying to kill him for months. His rifle was lost somewhere outside in the storm. The creature stared at him for a long moment. Then she spoke for the first time, her voice like music mixed with the sound of breaking glass. Why? Jake was surprised that she could speak his language. He was even more surprised by the question. Why what? Did you save me? She touched her injured leg gingerly. I have been hunting you. I would have killed you. Jake thought about it. He wasn't sure of the answer himself. I guess because it was the right thing to do. She tilted her head, studying him like he was. A puzzle she couldn't solve. Your species is strange. You were told you were weak, cowardly, but you fight well, and now you show mercy to an enemy. We're not weak, Jake said. We're just different from you. The storm raged outside their small shelter. They were trapped together until it passed. Jake found himself looking at his former pursuer more carefully. Up close, she was even more beautiful than he had realized. Her silver skin had patterns that shifted like flowing water. Her golden eyes held intelligence and something else he couldn't identify. "What's your name?" Jake asked. "I am Zaraketh of the Hunting Clan," she replied. "I am death that walks in shadows, the blade that cuts without sound." "That's quite a title," Jake said. "I'm Jake Morrison. I study rocks." Something that might have been amusement flickered in her eyes. "You study rocks, yet you have survived against me for 3 months. You are either the greatest rock studier in the galaxy, or there is more to humans than my people believe." Jake managed a tired smile. Maybe both. As the hours passed, they began to talk. Jake learned that Zaraketh came from a species called the Cathara. They were born hunters, raised from childhood to track and kill. Her people believed that strength was the only virtue that mattered, and that weak species deserved to be consumed by the strong. "But you are not weak," Zaraketh said, confusion clear in her voice. "You have no claws, no natural weapons, no enhanced senses, yet you have matched me step for step." Jake tried to explain human nature to her, how humans survived by working together, by using their minds instead of just their bodies, by refusing to give up even when the situation seemed hopeless. "We adapt," he said. "When something tries to hunt us, we learn to hunt it back. When we face a problem we can't solve with strength, we find another way." Zaraketh listened carefully. "My people say adaptation is weakness, that true strength comes from perfecting what you already are." "How's that working out for them?" Jake asked. For the first time, Zaraketh looked uncomfortable. "Our worlds grow empty. We consume, but do not create. We take, but do not give back. The elders say this is the natural way, but I have begun to wonder." Jake pulled out his emergency medical kit and gestured toward her wounded leg. "May I?" She nodded, watching as he cleaned and bandaged her wound. His touch was gentle but competent. "You heal enemies as well as fight them?" "You're not my enemy right now," Jake said. "Right now, you're just someone who needs help." Zaraketh was quiet for a long time after that. When she finally spoke, her voice was softer. "Tell me about your world, Jake Morrison, who studies rocks." Jake told her about Earth, about the blue oceans and green forests. He described cities full of millions of people working together, building amazing things. Talked about art and music, about scientific discoveries that helped everyone, about the dream of spreading life to other worlds. "Your people sound like builders," Zaraketh said. "Mine are destroyers. Now we've forgotten how to make anything beautiful. It's never too late to learn," Jake said. As the storm began to weaken, Zaraketh tested her bandaged leg. She could walk, but slowly. "I should kill you now," she said, but there was no threat in her voice. "It would be the honorable thing, according to my people." "But you won't," Jake said. It wasn't a question. "No, I will not." She looked at him. "With those golden eyes, you have shown me something I did not know existed. Mercy, kindness to enemies. I must think about what this means." Jake stood and checked outside the cave. The storm was passing, and he could see stars through the breaking clouds. "What happens now?" "Now you run," Zaraketh said, "and I will follow." "But the hunt has changed. Jake Morrison, I am no longer trying to kill you. I am trying to understand you. If you decide you don't like what you understand..." Zaraketh smiled, and for the first time it reached her eyes. "Then I suppose you will have to convince me. Otherwise..." Jake gathered his few remaining supplies. As he prepared to leave the cave, Zaraketh spoke again. "Jake Morrison," he turned back to her. "Thank you for saving my life, for showing me that strength and mercy can exist together. My people have no word for gratitude, but I think this is what I feel." Jake nodded. "You're welcome, Zaraketh." He walked out into the night, knowing she would follow when her leg healed enough. But something fundamental had changed between them. They were still hunter and prey, but now they were also something else. Two beings from different worlds who had found a moment of understanding in a storm behind him. Jake heard the wind chime sound one more time, but now it sounded different. Less like predators' laughter and more like music. He smiled as he disappeared into the forest, ready for whatever came next in their strange dance. Jake was checking his equipment when the emergency signal came through. His old communication device, salvaged from the research station, crackled to life with a desperate message. This is colony ship New Hope. We are under attack. Repeat, we are under attack. Multiple hostile ships have surrounded us. They are demanding we surrender. We have 300 civilians on board, including children. Anyone who can help, please respond. Jake's blood ran cold. The New Hope was one of the colony ships that brought families to settle on nearby worlds. Farmers, teachers, doctors, and their children. People who had never hurt anyone. The signal cut off with a burst of static. Jake tried to respond, but his equipment was too damaged to transmit. He was 40 miles from where the ship had to be. Based on the signal strength, even if he ran without stopping, it would take him hours to get there. Behind him, branches rustled. Zaraketh stepped out of the forest, moving carefully on her healing leg. For the past 2 weeks, she had been following him at a distance. Not hunting anymore, but not quite friendly either. She was trying to understand what he was, and Jake was trying to figure out what she wanted. Your people are in danger. She said it wasn't a question. How did you know? I heard the transmission. My people are attacking them. Her golden eyes were troubled. It is a hunting party. It will take the strong ones as prizes and kill the rest. Jake felt anger rise in his chest. Children, they're attacking children. My people do not see children as sacred like yours do. To us, weakness is weakness, regardless of age. Zaraketh looked uncomfortable saying it. I used to believe this was right. Now I have seen what humans are capable of. I've seen mercy and kindness. I think my people are wrong about many things. She paused. I want to help. Jake stared at her. Help? You want to help save human children from your own people? Yes, but I do not know if it is possible. The hunting party has 6 warriors and advanced weapons. You have only 1 damaged rifle and some explosive devices. Jake was already moving, packing his supplies. Then we'll have to be smart about it. Zaraketh caught up with him, her long legs easily matching his pace despite her injury. You would trust me in a fight against my own species? Do I have a choice? Jake looked at her seriously. Those people are going to die unless someone helps them. I can't do it alone. But together, maybe we have a chance. They ran through the forest together, an unlikely pair, united by desperate purpose. Zaraketh told Jake what she knew about Cathera hunting tactics. The warriors would surround the ship and use fear to make the humans surrender. They preferred to capture prey alive when possible, but they would kill anyone who resisted. Ship has some defensive systems, Jake said, breathing hard as they climbed over a rocky hill. But they're designed for navigation hazards, not warfare. Against 6 of your warriors, they won't last long. There is something else, Zaraketh said. The hunting party leader is Kazakh Vor. He is my former teacher. He trained me to be a hunter from childhood. Will he listen to you? Oh, he will. See me as a traitor for helping humans. He will try to kill me first. She was quiet for a moment. I am afraid, Jake Morrison. Jake stopped running and looked at her. It was the first time she had admitted fear about anything. We'll figure it out, we always do. They reached the area where the colony ship had landed just as the sun was setting. The New Hope was a big vessel, designed to carry families and their possessions to new worlds. It sat in a clearing surrounded by tall trees, looking peaceful and harmless. But Jake could see the Kithera ships hidden in the forest around it. Sleek, dangerous-looking craft that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Through his binoculars, he spotted movement in the trees. The hunters were positioning themselves for an attack. They will strike at full darkness, Zaraketh whispered. It gives them the advantage. Jake studied the situation. The colony ship's crew would have sealed the airlocks and activated whatever defenses they had, but they were sitting ducks. Once the Cathara decided to stop playing games, the fight would be over quickly. I have an idea, Jake said. But you're not going to like it. His plan was simple and dangerous. Zaraketh would approach the hunting party and challenge Kazakh Vor to single combat. This would distract them and give Jake time to reach the colony ship and help organize its defenses. He will not accept a challenge from a traitor, Zaraketh protested. Then make him angry enough that he has to fight you. You know him better than anyone. What would make him lose his temper? Zaraketh thought about it. If I told him that humans were superior warriors to the Cathara, that I had been beaten by a rock studier and was ashamed to return home. Perfect. That should get his attention. Jake, if this fails, we will both die. And the humans on that ship will die too. Jake checked his rifle and made sure his explosives were ready. If we do nothing, they die anyway. At least this way we're trying. Zaraketh reached out and touched his shoulder. Her silver skin was warm. You are either very brave or very foolish. Probably both, Jake admitted. They split up as planned. Jake circled around toward the colony ship, while Zaraketh walked directly toward the Cathara position. You could hear her voice carrying through the forest, speaking in her own language. The tone was mocking, challenging. Jake reached the ship and pounded on the emergency airlock. After a few tense moments, it opened to reveal a frightened-looking man in a ship's uniform. "Who are you?" the man demanded. "Jake Morrison, Geological Survey. I'm here to help. You're about to be attacked by alien hunters." The ship's captain was a woman named Lisa Park. She listened to Jake's explanation with growing alarm. The New Hope had some defensive systems, but nothing designed for real combat. They had energy shields that could stop small arms fire, and some mining lasers that could be turned into weapons. "We sent out a distress call hours ago," Captain Park said. "No response from the colony. They're too far away," Jake replied. "We're on our own." Through the ship's external cameras, they could see Zaraketh facing off against 6 Cathara warriors in the clearing. One of them, larger and more decorated than the others, stepped forward, Kazakfor. The confrontation was brief and violent. Kazakfor struck Zaraketh with contempt, sending her flying backward. But she got up and kept talking, gesturing toward the human ship. Jake could see her strategy working. The other hunters were getting agitated, their discipline breaking down. "Buying us time," Jake told Captain Park, "but not much. Can you get your people armed? Most of our colonists are farmers and teachers. They've never fought anyone, and we'll have to teach them fast." Jake helped organize the ship's defenses while Zaraketh continued her dangerous game outside. He showed the colonists how to use the mining equipment as weapons and set up defensive positions inside the ship. If the Cathara got through the outer hull, every corridor would become a battleground. The fight between Zaraketh and Kazakfor began with ritual formality, but quickly turned vicious. Jake watched through the cameras as they circled each other, silver forms moving like deadly dancers. Kazakfor was larger and stronger, but Zaraketh was faster and more desperate. When Kazakfor finally landed a killing blow, Jake thought it was over. Zaraketh fell to the ground and didn't get up. Other hunters began moving toward the ship, but Jake had been preparing for this moment. As the Cathara warriors approached the New Hope, he triggered the explosive charges he had planted around the clearing. The blasts lit up the night and sent the hunters scrambling for cover. "Now," Jake shouted into the ship's communication system, "hit them with everything we have." The New Hope's modified mining lasers opened fire, sweeping the forest with beams of energy. The ship's shields held against return fire from Cathara weapons. For a few minutes, the humans actually seemed to be winning. Then Jake saw something that made his heart stop. Zaraketh was moving. She wasn't dead after all. As Kazakfor stood over her in triumph, she drove a concealed blade up through his chest. The Cathara leader fell, and chaos erupted among his followers. Some fled immediately, while others attacked in rage. Zaraketh fought them all, her silver form moving through the darkness like liquid death. When the battle was over, 3 Cathara ships retreated into the night. 2 warriors lay dead in the clearing, and Zaraketh stood alone, wounded but alive. Jake ran to her as she collapsed. She was bleeding from multiple wounds, but her eyes were clear. "It is done," she whispered. "Your people are safe." "You did it," Jake said, holding her as medics from the ship rushed toward them. "You saved them all." Zaraketh smiled weakly. "We saved them, together." As the medics worked on her injuries, Jake realized that everything had changed again. Zaraketh had made her choice. She had chosen to protect humans rather than hunt them. She had chosen him over her own people. and Jake had chosen to trust her with the lives of 300 innocent people. Trust had not been misplaced. Whatever happened, next, they would face it together. The lights in the laboratory came back on slowly, revealing Jake standing near the control panel on the far side of the room. He was unarmed, his hands visible and empty. Zixara remained frozen in the center of the room, her weapon useless in her hand due to the electromagnetic interference that still filled the air around her. "I could have killed you a dozen different ways in the past 10 minutes, Jake said, his voice calm and steady. Poison gas, electrical discharge, explosive charges. This facility has enough experimental equipment to eliminate you in ways your people haven't even imagined yet." Zixara's breathing was heavy as she processed what had happened. She had walked into the most elaborate trap of her career, and she hadn't seen it coming until it was too late. Ah! Everything she had thought she understood about this human had been wrong. "Why didn't you?" she asked. Jake moved slowly across the room, staying far enough away that she couldn't reach him, even if her enhanced reflexes were working properly. "Because killing you wouldn't solve the real problem. Your empire would just send another hunter, then another, then a whole fleet if necessary. The cycle would never end." He stopped near a wall display and activated a holographic projector. Images began appearing in the air between them, showing scenes from various Vorthok facilities across the sector. Zixara recognized some of the locations from her own missions. "Do you know what these places really are?" Jake asked, gesturing to the images. The first image showed a mining facility where humans worked in dangerous conditions without proper protective equipment. The second displayed a processing plant where humans were sorted by age and physical condition like livestock. The third revealed a research station where humans were being used for medical experiments. "These are the facilities I've been hitting," Jake continued. "Not military targets, not strategic installations. Prison camps, where your people torture and murder innocent civilians." Zixara stared at the images. She had delivered prisoners to some of these locations herself, but she had never seen what happened to them afterward. Her orders had always been simple: capture targets and transport them to designated facilities. She had never questioned what those facilities were for. "This is propaganda," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. Jake activated more displays, showing documentation he had gathered over months of raids. Medical records, transport logs, death certificates. The evidence was overwhelming and came directly from Vorthok computer systems. "I pulled this data from your own networks," Jake said. "These are your people's records, written in your language, sealed with your security codes. 40,000 humans have died in these facilities in the past year alone." Zixara examined the data more closely. Her translator worked even in the electromagnetic interference, allowing her to read the documents. They were genuine Vorthok records, and they described horrors that she had never imagined her people were capable of. "The Empire told us humans were used for necessary labor," she whispered. "Your Empire lied to you," Jake replied. "It's like they've been lying to your people about what humans really are. We're not animals. We're not inferior. We're just different." Jake moved to another control panel and began reducing the electromagnetic interference in the room. Zixara's equipment started working again, but she made no move to use her weapons. She was too overwhelmed by what she was seeing to think about continuing their fight. "I've been documenting everything I found," Jake continued. "Evidence of war crimes, illegal medical experiments, genocide.
Oh God, yeah.
Your people's own records prove that the Empire is committing atrocities on a scale that violates every civilized law." In the galaxy, more images appeared, showing the humans Jake had rescued over the past months. They were in hidden facilities throughout the sector, being cared for by a network of sympathetic aliens from various species. Zixara realized that Jake hadn't been working alone after all. "There are others who oppose what your empire is doing," Jake explained. "Vorthok citizens who believe in justice, aliens from other species who've seen similar atrocities. The resistance is bigger than your leaders know." Zixara lowered her weapon completely. "Why are you showing me this?" "'Cause you've proven that you can be reasoned with," Jake said. "During the solar storm, you could have tried to kill me when I was distracted working on the life support systems. Instead, You helped where you could and shared information that kept us both alive. That tells me you have a conscience. Jake deactivated the remaining interference systems and stepped closer to Zixara. She could have shot him now, completed her mission, and returned to her ship. Instead, she found herself listening as he continued speaking. I've been fighting this war alone for 6 months, Jake said. I've freed fewer than 200 people in that time. At this rate, it would take me centuries to make a real difference. But with inside help from someone who understands Vorthok systems and has access to their facilities, we could save thousands. You want me to betray my own people? Zixara said. I want you to help me save innocent lives, Jake corrected, including the lives of Vorthok citizens who don't know what their government is doing in their name. When this truth comes out, and it will come out eventually, how do you think the galaxy will judge your entire species? Zixara considered his words. She had dedicated her life to serving the Empire, but the Empire she had served was supposed to represent honor and strength. The organization described in these documents was neither honorable nor truly strong. What would you need from me? She asked. Jake activated a new set of displays showing the locations of major prison facilities throughout Vorthok space. Intelligence about security systems, transport schedules, guard rotations. Help identifying which facilities house civilians versus actual criminals. Access to communication networks so we can coordinate larger rescue operations. And in return, I help you understand how humans really think and fight, Jake said. Share everything I've learned about conducting operations in Vorthok space. Together, we develop strategies that can free thousands of prisoners while minimizing casualties on both sides. Zixara studied the tactical information Jake was showing. His operations had been more sophisticated than she had realized. He hadn't just been randomly attacking targets. He had been building a comprehensive intelligence network and rescue operation. The facility at Kepler Station holds over 800 human prisoners, Jake continued. It's too heavily defended for me to attack alone, but with inside information about its security systems and a coordinated plan, we could evacuate everyone in a single operation. The scale of what Jake was proposing was far beyond anything Zixara had imagined. She had been thinking of their conflict as a personal hunt, but he had been planning a systematic campaign to dismantle the Empire's entire prisoner system. If I help you, she said slowly, I can never return to my old life. The Empire would consider me a traitor. Yes, Jake admitted, but you'd be helping to stop something that should never have been allowed to happen. Your people are better than this Zixara. The documents prove that many Vorthok citizens have tried to report these atrocities through official channels. They were silenced or eliminated. Zixara made her decision. She holstered her weapon and extended her hand toward Jake and the human. Gesture of agreement she had learned about during their conversations. Show me the plan for Kepler Station. Jake smiled and shook her hand. Welcome to the Resistance. 2 weeks later, Zixara used her security clearance to access Kepler Station while Jake and a team of volunteers approached from the outside. The coordinated operation freed 847 human prisoners and captured enough evidence to expose 3 more illegal facilities standing together in the empty prison facility. Watching the last transport ship carry freed prisoners to safety, both Jake and Zixara understood that their partnership represented something new. Not just cooperation between former enemies, but proof that understanding and justice could overcome even the deepest cultural differences. The hunt was over. The real work was just beginning.